7 guys, one global phenomenon. BTS didn't just dominate music, they rewrote the rules. But here's what most people overlook: leadership. Not just the title, the real thing. Who stays unshakable when pressure explodes? Who leads when cameras are off? Who holds the group together in silence? 7 members, 7 ranks, and trust me, number 1 is not who you think. Can you guess? Are you sure? Because this list is built on real moments, real facts, and real proof. Let's begin. Number 7, Jungkook. Okay, before anyone loses their mind in the comments, let me be absolutely clear about something. Being number 7 on this list does not mean Jungkook is a bad leader. Not even close. In fact, the very reason he's on this list at all is because this kid, and I say kid with the deepest respect because we literally watched him grow up in front of the entire world, has shown leadership qualities that most people twice his age could never dream of. But we're talking about stability here. Consistency, the kind of leadership that doesn't waver, that stays locked in no matter what era, what pressure, what chaos is happening around you. And when you understand Jungkook's story, truly understand where he started and where he is now, you'll realize that his leadership journey is less about being the steady anchor and more about being the most extraordinary evolution the K-pop industry has ever witnessed. And that is exactly why he opens this list. Let's rewind. It's 2011. A 14-year-old kid from Busan walks into big hit entertainment auditions. He's shy, like painfully shy, the kind of shy where he can barely make eye contact with the older trainees. He auditioned for Superstar K3 and didn't make it past the early rounds, but multiple agencies saw something in him. JYP, FNC, Starship, they all wanted him. But you know what made him choose Big Hit? He saw RM. He watched Kim Namjoon rap during his audition, and something about that raw charisma, that undeniable aura of leadership, pulled 15-year-old Jungkook in like gravity. Think about that for a second. The very origin of Jungkook joining BTS is literally tied to him being drawn to someone else's leadership. He wasn't walking in saying, "I'm going to lead this group." He walked in saying, "I want to follow that guy." And that's not a weakness. That's actually incredibly self-aware for a teenager. But it tells you something foundational about where Jungkook sits in the leadership dynamic of BTS. He came in as the baby, the maknae, the youngest member by years. And the Hyungs, RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, they all took on protective, guiding roles around him. There's that legendary story from their trainee days where Jungkook was so shy, he would wait until all the other members fell asleep before he'd take a shower. Let that satisfy your curiosity about just how introverted this kid was. He wouldn't even practice dancing in front of the others at first. J-Hope had to literally drag him into the practice room and work with him one-on-one. Now, does that sound like someone who was born to lead? No. But does that sound like someone who had the raw potential buried deep inside? Absolutely. And here's where Jungkook's story gets insanely compelling, because what happened over the next decade is nothing short of a leadership metamorphosis. Fast forward to 2015, 2016, BTS is gaining traction. They're doing variety shows, interviews, international appearances, and slowly, quietly, you start to see it. Jungkook starts speaking up more. He starts taking initiative in choreography. He begins suggesting ideas for music video scenes. During Bon Voyage Season 1, you can see moments where Jungkook, who used to hide behind his Youngs, is now navigating foreign cities, making decisions for the group during activities, and even gently directing the members during group tasks. It's subtle, it's not loud, but it's there. By the Love Yourself era in 2017-2018, Jungkook's quiet leadership starts becoming impossible to ignore. He's the center of almost every choreography, and being the center isn't just about talent, it's about trust. The group trusts him to hold the visual and energetic focal point of their most important performances. During concert rehearsals captured in behind-the-scenes footage, you can see Jungkook staying hours after everyone else to perfect his parts, not because someone told him to, because he holds himself to a standard that he refuses to let slip. That's a form of leadership, leading by example, leading through relentless, almost obsessive dedication. And the members notice. There's a moment in a Bangtan Bomb where Jimin talks about how Jungkook's work ethic pushes him to work harder. When your discipline inspires the people around you to elevate their own game, that is leadership, even if you're not the one giving speeches or making executive decisions. But here's the thing. And this is exactly why Jungkook is at number 7 and not higher on this list. His leadership, while genuine and powerful, has historically been reactive rather than proactive. What does that mean? It means Jungkook leads when the moment demands it, but he doesn't naturally position himself as the one who initiates direction. In group discussions during interviews, he often defers to RM or Suga first.
Number 6. BTS V. Alright, now we're getting into territory that's going to spark some serious debate, and honestly, I'm here for it. Number 6. Kim Taehyung V. The man who walks into a room and somehow bends the entire atmosphere around his energy without saying a single word. Now, if you're a Taehyung stan, and let's be real, the man has one of the most fiercely devoted fan bases on the entire planet, you might be thinking, number 6? Are you out of your mind? But hear me out, fully. Completely. Because by the end of this, you're not going to be mad. You're going to understand something about Taehyung's leadership that maybe you never articulated before. Something that actually makes him more fascinating than a conventional leader could ever be. Let's set the stage. Kim Taehyung was a hidden member. Let that sink in. While the other BTS members were being introduced to the public during their pre-debut period, Big Hit kept Taehyung a secret. He was literally the last member revealed before debut, and when he finally stepped into the spotlight, the reaction was immediate and explosive. People didn't just notice him, they were captivated by him. That face, that voice, that completely unpredictable energy that could shift from soulful and melancholic to wildly chaotic in the span of 3 seconds. From day one, Taehyung was never going to fit into a box, and that refusal to be boxed in is the very essence of his leadership style, and also the very reason he sits at number 6 on this particular list. See, here's the thing about leadership stability. It requires a certain degree of predictability, not in a boring way, but in a foundational way. The people around you need to be able to anticipate how you'll react in a crisis, how you'll show up during tough conversations, how you'll anchor the group when the ground beneath everyone's feet starts shaking. And Taehyung? Taehyung is a thunderstorm. Beautiful, awe-inspiring, absolutely magnificent, but not exactly the thing you'd describe as predictable. And that's not an insult. That's literally what makes him extraordinary. Let's go back to the early days, 2013, 2014. BTS is fighting for survival in an industry that's ready to chew them up and spit them out. They're from a small company. They have no industry connections. Every music show appearance is a battle. And in the middle of all that chaos, there's Taehyung, this wildcard of a human being who's simultaneously the most playful person in the room and the most deeply emotional. Watch any behind-the-scenes footage from that era and you'll see it. Taehyung is the one making the members laugh during exhausting schedules. He's the one pulling ridiculous faces during tense moments. He's the one who turns a miserable 12-hour rehearsal into something bearable just by being unapologetically, chaotically himself. And that, my friends, is a form of leadership that doesn't get enough credit. Emotional relief leadership. The ability to regulate the group's emotional temperature, not by giving speeches or making plans, but by simply existing as a force of lightness when everything else is heavy. During their Bon Voyage series, which is basically the most raw, unfiltered look at BTS's real dynamics, Taehyung consistently emerges as the member who pulls the group out of funks. When they're tired, he's the energy. When they're stressed, he's the comedy. When they're awkward with strangers, he's the one who walks up to random locals and starts a conversation with zero hesitation. In Bon Voyage Season 2 in Hawaii, there's a moment where the group is clearly drained from schedules, and Taehyung just starts doing something absurd, singing opera on the beach, talking to a seagull, something completely unhinged, and suddenly everyone's laughing, everyone's recharged, everyone's okay again. That's leadership. It's not the kind that shows up in a CEO manual, but it is absolutely the kind that keeps a group of 7 young men sane during the most insane journey in modern entertainment history. But now let's talk about the flip side, because this is where the stability factor comes in. Taehyung's leadership energy is deeply tied to his emotional state, and Taehyung is one of the most emotionally transparent members of BTS. When he's up, he takes everyone up with him, but when he's down, when something is weighing on him, that energy shifts dramatically. And unlike some of the members higher on this list who have an almost mechanical ability to separate their personal emotional state from their role in the group dynamic, Taehyung wears his heart not just on his sleeve, but on his entire being. There's a well-known moment during a fan-sign event where Taehyung was visibly struggling emotionally, and the other members, particularly Jimin and Hope, stepped in to cover for him, to shield him, to hold the energy of the event while Taehyung worked through whatever he was processing internally. That's not a criticism.
Number 5. Jimin. Now we're at number 5, and I need you to pay very close attention here, because this one is going to challenge everything you think you know about what leadership looks like. Park Jimin. The name alone carries a weight that's almost impossible to quantify, because if you ask any BTS member, any of them, who is the first person to notice when someone in the group is hurting, who is the first to reach out, who is the first to sacrifice their own comfort to make sure everyone else is okay, the answer comes back the same almost every single time: Jimin. And yet here he is at number 5, not number 1. And if that confuses you right now, good, because by the time I'm done explaining this, you're going to understand something profound about the difference between leading with your heart and leading with stability, and why one of those things, as beautiful as it is, can sometimes be the very thing that keeps you from climbing higher on a list like this. Let's go back to the beginning, because Jimin's origin story is one of the most intense in all of BTS. Park Jimin was the last member to be confirmed for the final BTS lineup. Let that hit you. While the other 6 members had already been locked in, Jimin was still fighting for his spot. He transferred from Busan Arts High School to Korea Arts High School specifically to pursue this dream, leaving behind everything familiar: his family, his friends, his entire support system. He trained in contemporary dance, not street dance or hip-hop, which meant he had to essentially rebuild his entire movement vocabulary from scratch to fit the idol framework. And even after all that sacrifice, he was on the edge. Big Hit wasn't sure he was ready. There are accounts from staff and members that Jimin was told multiple times that his spot was not guaranteed. Imagine that pressure. Imagine being 17 years old, away from home, pouring every ounce of your being into training and being told you might not make it. What does that kind of pressure do to a person? Well, in Jimin's case, it forged something extraordinary, an almost pathological need to give everything to the people around him, to prove his worth not through words, but through relentless, bone-deep devotion. And that devotion, that's the foundation of Jimin's leadership. It's not strategic, it's not calculated, it's visceral. Watch any BTS group content from any era. Literally pick any year, any season, any behind-the-scenes footage, and you'll see it. Jimin is the member who notices. He notices when Jungkook is being too quiet. He notices when Taehyung's smile isn't reaching his eyes. He notices when RM is carrying too much weight on his shoulders and trying to hide it. He notices when Suga is withdrawing. He notices when Jin is using humor to mask exhaustion. He notices when J-Hope's sunshine energy is running on fumes. And he doesn't just notice, he acts. There's a moment during one of BTS's concert behind the scenes that has become legendary among fans. The group had just finished an incredibly demanding show. Everyone was exhausted, drenched in sweat, barely able to stand. And while most of the members were collapsing into chairs and reaching for water, Jimin was going person to person, literally walking up to each member, putting a hand on their shoulder, asking if they were okay, handing them towels, making sure they had water before he even touched his own. That's not just being nice. That's caretaker leadership. It's the kind of leadership that creates emotional safety within a group, the kind that makes people feel like no matter how hard things get, someone has their back. And BTS has said this explicitly. In multiple interviews, the members have described Jimin as the emotional center of the group. RM once said that Jimin is the member who holds BTS together emotionally, the one who makes sure the human connections within the group never fray, even when professional pressures are at their most intense. Jungkook has talked about how Jimin took care of him like an older brother from trainee days, teaching him how to navigate the emotional complexities of idol life. Taehyung, whose friendship with Jimin is one of the most documented and celebrated relationships in K-pop, has said repeatedly that Jimin is the person he turns to when he needs someone who will truly, deeply listen without judgment. So if Jimin is this essential to BTS's emotional infrastructure, why is he at number 5 and not higher? Here's where we need to have an honest, nuanced conversation about the difference between emotional leadership and stable leadership. Because the very thing that makes Jimin an extraordinary emotional leader, his deep, almost limitless capacity to feel, is also the thing that introduces volatility into his leadership consistency. Jimin feels everything, and I don't mean that in a surface-level pop psychology way.
Number 4. Jin. Number 4. And yeah, I can already feel the shockwave coming through the screen. Kim Seok-jin. Jin, the eldest member of BTS, the man who by every traditional standard of Korean hierarchy and culture should be the most dominant leadership presence in the group. In Korean society, the eldest isn't just respected, the eldest carries authority. It's built into the language itself. Honorifics, speech levels, behavioral expectations, everything in Korean social dynamics revolves around age hierarchy. And Jin? Jin is the oldest in BTS by a significant margin in some cases. He's got 4 years on Jungkook. 4 years! In the K-pop trainee world, that might as well be a generation. So when people see Jin at number 4 and not in the top 2 or 3, the first reaction's confusion. How can the eldest, the one who culturally should lead, not be at the top of a leadership stability ranking? And that question, that exact question, is what makes Jin's story one of the most fascinating leadership case studies, not just in BTS, not just in K-pop, but in any high-performing group dynamic anywhere. Because Kim Seok-jin made a choice, a deliberate, conscious, incredibly selfless choice. And that choice defined BTS's entire leadership structure from day one. Let's rewind to the very beginning. It's 2010-2011. Jin is a student at Konkuk University studying acting and film. He's not training to be an idol. He's not dreaming of being in a boy band. He gets scouted on the street, literally spotted by a big hip casting agent who saw his face and thought, that person needs to be on camera. And Jin, who by his own admission had 0 singing training, 0 dance training, and 0 experience in the idol industry, decides to go for it. He walks into Big Hit and enters a world that is completely foreign to him. Every other member had some background. RM was already an underground rapper. Suga had years of producing and rapping experience. J-Hope was an award-winning street dancer. Jimin was a trained contemporary dancer. Taehyung had been scouted for his raw talent. Even Jungkook had auditioned for Superstar K3. Jin had a handsome face and a willingness to try. That's it. And here's what most people don't realize about how brutal that starting position was. Imagine being the oldest person in the room, but also the least experienced. Imagine watching 17-year-old Jungkook pick up choreography in minutes while you're struggling to get the basics after hours of practice. Imagine hearing Namjoon and Yoongi lay down rap verses with years of honed skill while you're still learning how to control your vocal tone. Imagine being the Hyung, the one who's supposed to be the example, the one the younger members look up to, and feeling like you're the one who's furthest behind. That psychological dissonance would destroy most people. It would either push them to overcompensate by asserting dominance through their age status, or it would make them shrink into irrelevance. Jin did neither. Instead, he did something that I genuinely believe is one of the most underappreciated leadership decisions in BTS's entire history. He stepped back, not out, back. He recognized, with maturity that honestly defies his age at the time, that RM was the natural leader. He recognized that Suga had the strategic mind. He recognized that J-Hope had the organizational energy. And instead of fighting for a leadership position that his age entitled him to, he chose to support. He chose to be the buffer, the shock absorber, the emotional cushion that softened every blow the group took. And he did it with Jin dad jokes. I know. The dad jokes are a meme at this point, but think about what those jokes actually do in a group dynamic. BTS is under unimaginable pressure. They're exhausted. They've been awake for 36 hours. They have another interview in 10 minutes. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. And then Jin drops some absolutely terrible pun, and everyone groans, and everyone laughs, and suddenly the tension drops by 50%. That's not just comedy, that's emotional regulation. Jin uses humor as a leadership tool with a precision that most people completely miss because they're too busy rolling their eyes at the punchline. He reads the room, he reads it perfectly, and deploys exactly the right amount of absurdity to reset the emotional temperature. And he does it so naturally, so effortlessly, that it looks like he's just being goofy. He's not. He's leading.
There's a specific moment from their 2018 world tour behind the scenes that illustrates this perfectly. The group had just dealt with a technical disaster during a concert, equipment failures, sound issues, the kind of stuff that can completely derail a performance and tank morale afterward. Backstage, the energy was frustrated and heavy. RM was in leader mode trying to figure out what went wrong.
Number 3. Suga. Number 3. We're in the top 3 now. And the air just got different. Because when I tell you that the 3 members standing at the peak of this list are operating on a level of leadership stability that borders on otherworldly, I am not exaggerating even a little bit. Number 3. Min Yoongi. Suga. August D. The man with 3 names and a mind so sharp it could cut through steel without making a sound. If BTS were a chess game, and in many ways, surviving and thriving in the global entertainment industry is a chess game, Suga would be the player who sees 15 moves ahead while everyone else is still figuring out their second. And the scariest thing about Yoongi's leadership? You don't even realize it's happening until you look back and see that every single move he made was deliberate, calculated, and exactly right. Let me take you back to Daegu, South Korea. Early 2000s. A young Min Yoongi discovers hip-hop, and something inside him fundamentally shifts. This isn't a casual interest. This isn't a kid listening to music and thinking that's cool. This is a teenager who finds his religion. Yoongi starts studying rap like it's a doctoral thesis. He learns about Epic High, Stony Skunk, American hip-hop, the entire lineage and philosophy of the genre. By the time he's in middle school, he's already writing lyrics. By high school, he's producing beats on equipment he saved up for with part-time jobs, delivering newspapers, working at a convenience store, doing whatever he had to do to afford the gear. He becomes part of Taegu's underground rap scene under the name Gloss, and the people who were in that scene at the time will tell you, Yoongi wasn't just talented. He was driven in a way that made other people uncomfortable. There was something almost frightening about the intensity of his focus. And then he joins Big Hit. And here's where the story gets complicated, because Yoongi didn't sign up to be in a boy band. He signed up to be a rapper, a producer, a hip-hop artist. When Big Hit's direction shifted from a hip-hop crew concept to a full idol group with choreography, fan service, and all the trappings of the K-pop machine, Yoongi was furious. He's talked about this openly. He felt betrayed. He felt like the rug had been pulled out from under him. There were moments where he seriously considered leaving. Let that sit for a second. The person sitting at number 3 on this leadership stability list almost walked away from BTS. And the fact that he didn't, the fact that he made the conscious decision to stay, to adapt, to pour his energy into making this new direction work, that is the first monumental display of Yoongi's leadership. Because walking away would have been the emotional decision. Staying was the strategic decision. He looked at the situation, assessed the variables, recognized that the opportunity in front of him, even if it wasn't exactly what he'd envisioned, was too significant to abandon, and he committed. Fully. Completely. That ability to override emotion with strategic thinking, that's the backbone of everything Yoongi brings to BTS's leadership dynamic. Now let's talk about what Yoongi's leadership actually looks like in practice, because it's unlike anything else in this group. Yoongi doesn't lead with charisma like RM. He doesn't lead with energy like J-Hope. He doesn't lead with emotional warmth like Jimin or humor like Jin. Yoongi leads with truth. Raw, unfiltered, sometimes uncomfortable truth. He's the member who will sit in a group meeting and say the thing that everyone is thinking but nobody wants to say. There's a moment during one of BTS's Festa dinner conversations that has become iconic among fans who study BTS's group dynamics. The members were discussing their struggles, and while some members were being diplomatic, softening their frustrations, trying to keep things light, Yoongi cut straight through. He laid out the reality of their situation with surgical precision. No sugarcoating. No padding, just facts, observations, and honest assessment. And here's the crucial part. The other members respected it. They didn't flinch. They didn't get defensive. They listened. Because over years and years of working together, BTS has learned that when Yoongi speaks, he's not being harsh for the sake of being harsh. He's being honest because he genuinely believes that honesty, even when it stings, is the only foundation on which real progress can be built. That's what I call surgical leadership. The ability to diagnose a problem, cut through the noise, and present the reality in a way that moves the group forward. Not everyone can do this. Most people either avoid confrontation entirely or handle it so clumsily that it creates more problems than it solves. Yoongi does it with a precision that the other members have come to not just tolerate, but actively rely on. There are multiple instances where RM has said that when he's facing a difficult decision as BTS's leader, one of the first people he turns to is Yoongi. Not for comfort, for analysis. For a clear-eyed breakdown of the situation. For the perspective that isn't clouded by emotion or optimism bias. RM gets the emotional support from Jimin. He gets the energy boost from J-Hope. But when he needs someone to sit with him and coldly, methodically think through a problem, he goes to Yoongi. And that tells you everything about where Min Yoongi sits in BTS's leadership hierarchy. Now let's talk about production, because this is where Yoongi's leadership extends beyond group dynamics and into the very DNA of BTS's music. Min Yoongi is not just a rapper in BTS. He is a producer, a songwriter, a composer, a musical architect. Under his production name, he has contributed to an insane number of BTS tracks, and his influence on the group's sonic direction is immeasurable. But more than that, Yoongi has produced for other artists. Saran, Halsey, IU, Lee Soara, Juice WRLD. The range of his collaborative production work speaks to a creative leadership capacity that transcends BTS entirely. When Yoongi sits in a studio and crafts a beat, he's not just making music. He's making decisions. Hundreds of decisions. What sound goes where? What emotion to prioritize? What to leave in? What to cut? And every single one of those decisions reflects a leadership skill, the ability to trust your vision, commit to a direction, and see it through to completion. His solo work as August D is the ultimate expression of this. The August D trilogy, his 3 mixtapes and albums spanning nearly a decade, is one of the most ambitious and deeply personal artistic projects in modern music. D-Day, his final album in the trilogy, wasn't just music. It was a statement. A decade-long narrative about mental health, societal pressure, identity, self-acceptance, and the cost of ambition, delivered with a musical and conceptual coherence that most artists can't achieve in a single album, let alone across 3. That kind of long-term artistic vision requires a leadership of self that is staggering. But let's get to the stability question, because that's what this list is about. Why is Yoongi at number 3 and not number 1 or 2? And the answer is nuanced but important. Yoongi's leadership is incredibly stable in its nature. He is always the strategist, always the truth teller, always the analytical mind, but it is selectively stable in its application. What does that mean? It means Yoongi chooses when to lead and when to conserve. He's not the member who's constantly, actively, visibly leading every single day in every single interaction. He conserves his leadership energy for the moments that matter most. During casual, low-stakes situations, variety shows, casual V-Lives, everyday group interactions, Yoongi often takes a back seat. He's quiet. He observes. He lets the more extroverted members drive the energy. And then, when a high-stakes moment arrives, a critical business decision, an emotional crisis within the group, a creative crossroads, Yoongi steps forward with a force and clarity that immediately commands the room. This selective engagement is, in many ways, incredibly smart. It prevents leadership fatigue. It ensures that when Yoongi does speak up, his words carry maximum weight, and it allows the other members to develop their own leadership muscles without feeling overshadowed. But from a pure stability standpoint, meaning consistent, always on, never wavering leadership presence, the 2 members above him edge him out because they bring that same level of strategic brilliance and maintain a visible, active leadership presence across all situations, not just the critical ones. There's also the factor of Yoongi's well-documented health struggles. His shoulder injury, which he eventually had surgery for, caused him significant physical limitations for years. His openness about mental health, his battles with depression, anxiety, and the pressures of fame, while incredibly brave and important for destigmatizing those conversations, also reflects periods where his capacity to lead was affected by personal struggles. Again, this is human. This is real. And his honesty about these things is itself a form of leadership that has helped millions of people. But on a stability ranking, consistency is king, and the 2 members above Yoongi have demonstrated a slightly more uninterrupted leadership consistency across BTS's entire timeline. So that's number 3. Min Yoongi, the shadow general, the quiet strategist, the man who doesn't need to be the loudest voice in the room because when he speaks, everyone, and I mean everyone, stops and listens. He leads with his mind, his honesty, and his unshakable commitment to the truth, and he does it with a coolness that makes you wonder if the man has ice water in his veins instead of blood. Number 2. J-Hope. Number 2. And I need you to understand something before I even say this name. The gap between number 2 and number 1 on this list is so microscopically thin, so agonizingly close, that I genuinely lost sleep over it. I went back and forth. I rewatched hundreds of hours of content. I read interviews. I studied behind-the-scenes footage frame by frame. And at the end of all that, I arrived at a conclusion that I will defend to my last breath. But I will also fully acknowledge that if you disagree, you're not wrong. You're just seeing it from a different angle. Number 2. Jung Hoseok. J-Hope. The sun. The engine. The man who has been running at full capacity for over a decade and has never, not once, not for a single documented moment, allowed himself to stop. And when I say never, I don't mean it as hyperbole. I mean it as observable, verifiable, almost frightening fact. Because Jung Hoseok's leadership stability isn't just impressive. It's borderline inhuman. And the story of how he became this way is one of the most extraordinary journeys in BTS's entire history. Let's go to Gwangju. Early 2000s. A young Jung Hoseok falls in love with dance. Not just any dance, street dance. Popping, locking, freestyle, the raw underground culture of movement and expression. And he doesn't just dabble, he devours it. By the time he's in his early teens, Hoseok is winning dance competitions. Not small ones. National ones. He was part of a street dance team called Neuron, and within the Gwangju underground dance scene, he was already building a reputation as someone whose work ethic was almost pathological. Other dancers would practice for 2 hours and go home. Hoseok would practice for 6. Other dancers would master a routine and move on. Hoseok would master it, and then break it apart and rebuild it and master it again from a different angle. This isn't legend. This is documented by people who were in those dance crews with him. They describe a teenager whose relationship with discipline wasn't just committed, it was obsessive. And that obsessive discipline? That's the foundation upon which J-Hope's entire leadership identity was built. When Hoseok joined Big Hit as a trainee, the transition was seismic. He was a dancer, a street dancer, not a singer, not a rapper, not an all-around entertainer. He had to learn rapping from scratch. He had to develop his vocal ability. He had to learn the entire idol framework while simultaneously maintaining and evolving his dance skills. And here's what separates Hoseok from virtually every other human being who has ever attempted this transition. He did it without ever dropping the ball. Not once. While he was learning to rap, his dance practice didn't suffer. While he was developing his stage presence, his technical skills didn't decline. While he was navigating the emotional complexities of trainee life, his energy never dimmed. He just kept going. Like a machine. Like a force of nature that simply does not have an off switch. And when BTS debuted in 2013, that relentless engine became the single most critical structural component of the group's performance quality. J-Hope was designated as BTS's dance leader, and let me tell you, that title doesn't even begin to capture what he actually does. Being BTS's dance leader doesn't mean he's the best dancer who happens to be in the group. It means he is responsible for the group's entire choreographic standard. He learns the choreography first. He breaks it down. He teaches it to the other members. He corrects their form. He adjusts timing. He runs through formations. He identifies weak points and creates individual practice plans to address them. He does all of this while also perfecting his own performance. And he does it for every single comeback. For over a decade. Every era. Every album. Every tour. Every special stage. J-Hope is the one in the practice room first and the one who leaves last. And in between, he is simultaneously performing at the highest level and coaching 6 other world-class performers to match that level. The sheer stamina, physical, mental, and emotional, required to maintain this role across BTS's entire career is something that I don't think most people fully comprehend. Now let's talk about the aspect of J-Hope's leadership that makes him truly extraordinary. His emotional consistency. And this is where we need to have a really honest conversation about what the name J-Hope actually represents. Jung Hoseok chose his stage name deliberately. Hope. He wanted to be hope for the group. He wanted to be the member who radiates positivity, who keeps the energy up, who ensures that no matter how dark things get, there is always a source of light in the room. And the terrifying thing is, he has maintained that role with an almost supernatural consistency for over 13 years. Think about what that requires. Think about the days when you wake up exhausted, when your body hurts, when you're homesick, when you're doubting yourself, when the pressure of being one of the most famous people on the planet is crushing your chest like a physical weight, and you still have to walk into that practice room with a smile and be the sun for 6 other people. You still have to be the one who says, "Great job," and "one more time," and "we've got this," when every fiber of your being wants to collapse. There's a moment in Burn the Stage that shattered the carefully maintained illusion of J-Hope's perpetual sunshine, and it remains one of the most important moments in BTS's documentary history. After a concert, backstage, J-Hope breaks down. He's frustrated with a performance he felt wasn't good enough. He's exhausted. And for just a few minutes, the mask slips, and you see the cost of being J-Hope. You see the weight of being everyone's sunshine. You see a man who gives and gives and gives his energy to other people and rarely, if ever, allows himself to receive that same energy back. And here's the part that absolutely destroyed me when I first saw it. After that breakdown, after those raw, vulnerable minutes of genuine emotional release, J-Hope pulls himself together. He wipes his face. He takes a breath. And he goes back to being J-Hope. Not because someone told him to. Not because a camera was rolling. But because that's who he is. That's the role he chose. The responsibility he accepted. And he will not let it falter. Not for himself. And especially not for the 6 people who depend on his light. That is leadership stability at its most raw and honest and brutal and beautiful. But J-Hope's leadership extends far beyond emotional energy management. Let's talk about his role as the bridge in BTS's leadership structure. Every successful group needs a bridge, someone who connects the top-level leadership with the rest of the team. In BTS, RM is the leader. He makes the big decisions. He's the public face of the group's direction. He carries the weight of the title. But between RM's leadership and the other members' buy-in, there needs to be someone who translates. Someone who takes RM's vision and makes it tangible, actionable, and energized for the whole group. That person is J-Hope. Watch any rehearsal footage carefully. RM will often set the direction. This is what we're going for. This is the concept. This is the energy. And then J-Hope takes over the execution. He's the one who turns that abstract vision into physical reality in the practice room. He's the one who makes sure that every member doesn't just understand the choreography, but feels it. He's the bridge between concept and execution, between vision and performance, between RM's mind and BTS's body. And he does this with a consistency that is genuinely unmatched. Not just in BTS, in the entire K-pop industry. Ask any choreographer who has worked with BTS. Ask Sun Sung-duk, their longtime performance director. They will tell you that J-Hope is the backbone, the non-negotiable, the one element of BTS's performance machine that simply cannot be removed without the entire structure collapsing. Now his solo career. Because J-Hope's solo moves revealed yet another dimension of his leadership that cemented his position this high on the list. Jack in the Box was bold. It was dark. It was a deliberate departure from the sunny J-Hope persona, and it took guts to release something that you know is going to confuse and challenge the audience that loves you for your brightness. But he did it because he understood, as a leader of his own artistic identity, that growth requires risk. And then Lollapalooza. Jung Hoseok became the first South Korean artist to headline a main stage at a major American music festival. First, ever. The weight of that, not just for himself, but for the entire Korean music industry, is incalculable. And he didn't just show up. He dominated. He delivered a performance that festival veterans said was one of the best they'd ever seen at Lollapalooza, across any genre, any artist, any era. He took the responsibility of being a trailblazer and turned it into a masterpiece. That's leadership. And then there's his military service. J-Hope was the second member to enlist, and he chose to go through one of the most rigorous training programs available. He became an assistant drill instructor. Not because he had to, because that's who Jung Hoseok is. Even in the military, Even when he could have chosen a simpler path, he chose to lead. He chose to be responsible for training other soldiers. He chose to maintain the standard of excellence that has defined his entire life. When he was discharged, fellow soldiers described him as one of the most dedicated and respected service members they'd encountered. Of course they did. Because J-Hope doesn't know how to be anything other than excellent. So why is this absolute titan of Number 1. RM. Number 1. And if you've been paying attention, truly paying attention, to every single word in this ranking, then this should not surprise you. But it should move you. Because the story of Kim Namjoon's leadership is not just a story about a man who led a boy band. It is a story about a human being who was handed the weight of an entire universe before he was old enough to vote, who was told, carry this, and if you drop it, everything and everyone you love falls with it, and who responded by saying, okay, and then never put it down. Not once. Not for a single day across 13 years. Not when the world doubted him. Not when the industry laughed at him. Not when the pressure nearly shattered him from the inside out. Kim Namjoon. RM. The leader of BTS. The most stable leader in this group. And, I will argue this to my grave, one of the most stable leaders in the entire history of modern entertainment. Let's go back to the very beginning. Not BTS's beginning. Namjoon's beginning. It's the mid-2000s in Ilsan, South Korea. A teenage kid with an IQ that's been tested at 148, genius level, literally, discovers hip-hop. And like Yoongi and Taehyung, this isn't a casual interest. It rewires his brain. He starts writing. He starts rapping. He enters the underground scene under the name Runch Randa, and almost immediately, he catches attention. Not just casual attention. The kind of attention where established underground rappers, people who've been in the scene for years, turn their heads and say, who is this kid? He was featured on tracks. He was recognized by Sleepy, by other notable figures in the Korean hip-hop underground. He was building a path toward becoming a legitimate, respected solo rapper. And then Bang Si-hyuk, the founder of Big Hit Entertainment, heard him, and everything changed. Bang PD didn't just sign Namjoon as a trainee. He signed Namjoon as the foundation. The original concept of BTS was built around Namjoon. He was the first member, the cornerstone. Every other member who joined, Yoongi, J-Hope, Jin, Jimin, Taehyung, Jungkook, they were all, in a sense, building around the structure that Namjoon represented. And with that foundational role came a title that would define the rest of his life, leader. Namjoon was 16 years old when he was designated as BTS's leader. 16. Think about that. Think about what you were doing at 16. Think about the decisions you were capable of making, the emotional maturity you had, the ability you possessed to manage complex interpersonal dynamics under extreme pressure. Now imagine being told, at 16, you are responsible for 6 other human beings. Their careers depend on you. Their emotional well-being depends on you. The direction of this group, which, by the way, is our company's entire future and might collapse at any moment, depends on you. Most 16-year-olds would crumble. Most adults would crumble. Namjoon didn't crumble. He didn't even hesitate. He accepted the role with a quiet seriousness that, in hindsight, was the first sign of the extraordinary leadership stability that would carry BTS from a cramped practice room in Gangnam to stadiums on every continent on Earth. The early years were brutal. 2013, 2014, 2015, BTS was nobody. Worse than nobody. They were actively dismissed. They came from a small company with no resources, no industry connections, no Sunbae groups to pave the way. They were performing at tiny venues for crowds that sometimes numbered in the dozens. They were sharing a single apartment, sleeping in one room, surviving on tight budgets. And through all of that, Namjoon was leading. Not just performing, leading. He was the one who stayed up after everyone else fell asleep, writing lyrics, crafting the group's artistic identity, making sure that BTS's music had something to say. Because Namjoon understood something that most idol leaders never grasp, that in an industry saturated with talent, the thing that separates the groups that fade from the groups that become legends is not skill. It's message. It's having something genuine, something urgent, something real to communicate to the world. And Namjoon made it his personal mission to ensure that BTS's music was never empty. From the very first album, The lyrics address social issues, the pressure on youth, the education system, mental health, economic inequality, the feeling of being dismissed and overlooked by the powerful. These weren't trendy topics. In 2013 K-pop, singing about societal pressure was commercial suicide. Every advisor, every industry veteran, everyone with experience told them it wouldn't work. But Namjoon held the line. He believed, with a conviction that bordered on reckless, that authenticity would win. That if they told the truth, people would listen. And he was right. But being right doesn't mean it was easy. And this is where Namjoon's leadership stability reveals its true depth. Because leading BTS wasn't just about making creative decisions. It was about managing 6 fundamentally different human beings, each with their own insecurities, ambitions, frustrations, and breaking points. And Namjoon had to navigate all of it while simultaneously managing his own struggles, and the man had plenty. He's talked openly about his battles with self-doubt, about moments where he questioned whether he was good enough to be leader, about the crushing weight of knowing that every mistake he made didn't just affect him. It affected 6 other lives and the livelihoods of everyone at their company. There's a moment in one of BTS's early vlogs that I think about constantly. Namjoon is sitting alone, late at night, and he's talking to the camera, essentially talking to future Army, about the pressure of being leader. And he says something that is so simple and so devastating that it has stuck with me for years. He says, roughly paraphrased, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing this right. I don't have anyone to ask. There's no manual for this. I just have to guess and hope I'm not ruining everything." He was 19 when he said that. 19 years old, carrying the weight of 7 careers on his back, and his coping mechanism was talking to a camera in the middle of the night because he had nobody else to turn to. And you know what he did the next morning? He woke up. He walked into the practice room. And he LED, with a smile, with encouragement, with direction, with every single ounce of energy he had. Because that's what Namjoon does. That's what Namjoon has always done. He processes his darkness in private and shows up in the light for everyone else. That is leadership stability at its most profound. Let's talk about the range of Namjoon's leadership, because this is what ultimately separates him from every other member on this list. J-Hope's leadership is extraordinary, but it's primarily concentrated in performance execution and emotional energy. Suga's is concentrated in strategic analysis and truth-telling. Jin's is concentrated in emotional protection. Jimin's in emotional care. Taehyung's in creative vision. Jungkook's in inspirational growth. Namjoon's leadership covers all of those dimensions and adds layers that no one else carries. He is the public face of BTS's leadership. He is the one who speaks at press conferences. He is the one who addressed the United Nations, not once, not twice, but multiple times, delivering speeches about self-love and youth empowerment to the General Assembly. He's the one who navigates interviews in English when BTS does international press, translating not just language, but culture, making sure BTS's message lands correctly in contexts that are vastly different from their own. He's the one who sits across the table from executives and negotiates the group's direction. He's the one who, during the infamous 2022 Festa dinner, sat with tears streaming down his face and led the most difficult conversation BTS has ever had. The conversation about their future, about solo activities, about the possibility that the group as they knew it might need to change. That dinner, that single dinner is, in my opinion, the most important leadership moment in BTS's entire history. Because it was the moment where the easiest thing in the world would have been to avoid the conversation, to keep going, to pretend everything was fine, to ride the wave until it crashed. And Namjoon refused to take the easy path. He sat those 6 men down and said, essentially, "We need to talk about this honestly, even though it's going to hurt, because I love this group too much to let it die a slow death of inauthenticity." And the way he led that conversation, with tears, with vulnerability, with honesty, but also with a clear-eyed vision for what BTS could become if they were brave enough to evolve. That was a masterclass in leadership that business schools should be studying. He didn't dictate. He didn't demand. He created space for every member to speak their truth, and then he synthesized all of those truths into a path forward. And BTS survived. Not just survived. They entered their solo era with a clarity and unity that most groups can only dream of, Precisely because Namjoon had the courage to lead them through the hardest conversation instead of around it. And let's talk about consistency. Because this is where Namjoon edges out even J-Hope, and it's the reason he sits at the absolute peak of this list. Namjoon's leadership has not wavered from 2010 to 2026. Not during the struggle years. Not during the explosion of global fame. Not during the controversies. Not during the exhaustion of back-to-back world tours. Not during the pandemic. Not during the military enlistment era. At every single phase of BTS.
So there it is. 7 members, 7 ranks, one undeniable truth. BTS is not led by one person. It never was. It's led by 7 leaders, each bringing something irreplaceable to the table. Jungkook leads through growth and relentless evolution. Taehyung leads through artistic fearlessness and emotional authenticity. Jimin leads through the depth of his heart and his refusal to let anyone in the group feel alone. Jin leads through sacrifice, protection, and the quiet strength of choosing to be the foundation instead of the crown. Suga leads through strategy, truth, and a mind so sharp it cuts through every illusion. J-Hope leads through discipline, energy, and an almost unhuman commitment to never letting the engine stop. And Namjoon leads through everything, all of it, all the time, without pause, without fail, without ever asking for recognition or rest. That's BTS. That's why they're not just a group, they're a phenomenon. 7 different kinds of leadership working in perfect harmony, creating something the world had never seen before and may never see again. And the most beautiful part, they'll tell you themselves, none of them could do it alone. The leadership isn't in any single member, it's in the space between them. It's in the trust, the love, the history, and the shared belief that together they are more than the sum of their parts. Thanks for staying until the end. If this ranking made you think, made you feel, made you see these 7 men in a way you hadn't before, then it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Until next time, stay curious, stay passionate, and never stop looking deeper than the surface. Peace.